Hi everyone, it's David Chalk here in southern Rhode Island, looking at the Atlantic Ocean. It's a rough day, obviously, and we have a message from Jeshua coming through. I'll just take a moment and get centered. I'll say a prayer, say it silently to myself, and then he'll begin. Indeed, beloved friends. Another day, another dollar, as they say. The day the Lord has made. Rejoice in it. Indeed, how do you begin your day? As the mind awakens and you leave your slumber, hopefully a long and comfortable one, restorative, the mind looking at its movies, which help to reset you so that you might function again in a world which is quite um, insane, in which the understanding, if we would use that word, the belief, is that things are quite different from the way they are in reality, and therefore the mind, seeking to adapt to the world, is constantly twisting itself in knots. And it is the dreaming at night that helps to untwist it a bit so that you might get back to an understanding of reality and start a new day, the new day the Lord has made. The Lord, in many ways, has cleaned up your old day so that you get to start again. And yet you may notice that the same patterns begin to come into the mind even while you are lying in your bed or beginning your day, having your morning coffee, whatever it is. The thoughts come back. Oh yes, I have these worries from yesterday. Oh my goodness, this worry, and many, many things, yes. And you think before you even get up, perhaps I will just stay in bed. What's the point? If you have this experience, beloved friends, you are not alone. It has been said to have compassion because everyone in this world is fighting a great battle. What we would suggest is to extend that compassion to yourself. For it is in the relationship with self that what is called the rubber meets the road, to use your words. Yes, it is where the true transformation can occur. Because, and listen carefully if you would, what you are seeing as your world, and we mean this quite literally, is an extension of how you have chosen to see yourself, of how you have chosen to see yourself. For your experience of self is not dictated by the Father, by the Mother God. You have the freedom to see yourself as dark and smeared with sin, unsavable, deserving of punishment, deserving of unhappiness, deserving of the various forms of hell. It can be hard to see that it is the Father's love, the Mother's love, the unconditional love that God is, that extends to you this capacity. You might say that the God, Mother, Father, is grieved. You might say this. But that is not what is happening. Even in what you call your great self-judgment, self-condemnation, and the hells that it creates, the Father, the Mother, merely celebrates with love the freedom and beauty that you are. Darn, you might say, I thought I was doing this better than that. I thought in my complaint, in my victimhood, my hatred of God, my hatred of life, my hatred of myself primarily, that I had somehow managed to get my parents' attention, to get them to see how difficult it is and how awful creation is and how God should have done something differently. And we hope there is some sense of humor that arises when you hear this description, because it is indeed worthy of ridicule. Ridiculous. You are not ridiculous, but the idea that God's child can be harmed, smeared with sin, and lost to her, is worthy of ridicule. Now, the figure of Jesus Christ is sent, and there are many in many traditions who are sent, to free humanity from its sin. If what we are saying is true, that you are free, and that what you are can never be altered to be a darker and lesser thing because of your deeds, what is it that we are talking about then when we are talking about sin and the alleviation of it? For indeed, sin is a thing that is occurring. It is just not what you think. It is not associated with guilt. Well, what is he saying? Sin is not associated with guilt. Yes, beloved friends, that is what I'm saying. Sin and guilt are not related. Because sin, to use the words again, is a thing. Guilt is not, except for an imagined thing. Sin means to miss the mark. It has been co-opted by those seeking to generate an experience of fear to mean, darkened by actions which make you unredeemable, or morally wrong, separated from the father's love, from the mother's love. That is not what is happening. That is not the thing we are speaking about when we speak of sin, but sin is a thing because you are indeed missing the mark when you insist that you can be a victim, that you can do anything of genuine harm to your Creator. That is missing the mark by a wide margin. We have the vision of your baseball where one swings and the ball is 3 feet away from the bat. Missing it by a lot. The correction of sin is love. The correction of sin is to love your enemies. For it is your enemies, your mistaken thoughts, the thoughts that are missing the mark so dramatically, those are your enemies. And in your projection and fear and unhealed state, you will say, it is the world, it is Bin Laden, or whoever it is this week, the Russians. They are the enemy. But we will say none of that would be occurring to get your attention if you did not need it. The mass shootings, whatever it is, the illness, whatever it is. These are not things which the Father, Mother desires for you. They are that which you desire for you in your attempt to play what has been described as a game of hide and seek. But you see, given who you are, that game is cosmic. Because of the power that God has given you through her love, you are indeed unlimited, except that you cannot harm another, yes? And you cannot in truth harm yourself. You are unlimited except you do not have the capacity to truly harm creation. But you certainly are given the freedom to imagine that you can. These thoughts, these ideas, are contrary to the consciousness of your world. If you consider projection like a dramatic play in which one person writes one part and it goes out on stage and begins yelling and screaming, and the other person writes their part and goes out on stage and begins yelling and screaming, and they yell and scream at each other and have the great war or whatever it is, each because they have not looked within and done the healing necessary so that they did not need to project this character into the world. That is very much what is going on. Two beings abiding in illusion, coming together in conflict and war. And dishonesty. We are not judging the dishonesty, but it is dishonest to say, oh, the reason I am suffering is because of what you have done. No, beloved friends, it is not. The reason you are suffering is because of what you have done. And we are not what is called blaming the victim, because do you understand here, there are none. And what we are sharing is a thought, not a directive, not a guideline for action. We are sharing an idea with you and seeking for you to understand it clearly by our description of it. You do not need to believe it. We are simply saying that because God is love, you are free. And because you are free, you cannot be a victim. And because you are free, only love is real. And if you are seeing something else, there is no point in yelling and screaming at that one on the stage or at yourself, but to bring compassion to yourself, for you have been fighting a great fight. You have been living a life of sin, of believing that you somehow can be diminished or lost or reduced from what you were into something dark, into something evil. You have been living in that sin, the belief that that was possible. You have been missing the mark. God's child cannot be lost to him. God's child cannot be harmed. She sees that this is true. What are you thinking about God if you believe that God is incapable of protecting her children, or incapable of loving her children? This is the insanity of sin that you have been living within, the belief that somehow something other than love has taken over, and that you are, pardon the expression, I'm not, apart from having experienced this myself, so it is, I'm looking at myself as well, yes, your petulance has not changed the majesty of God. God embraces all things, loves all things, and indeed all things are well, including your desire to reject this message and to continue with your game of denial, projection, war, and destruction. If that is what occurs and it is your choice, there are always new worlds. And with that, we complete this sharing. Amen.